No.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna return this book. It said by like December 20th.
So if, has anyone actually seen it? Okay, so it does exist at least for Isabel. All right, I don't think that minute hand has moved at all. I think it's not a battery issue. All right, so I don't keep looking at that clock and thinking we got hours to go. It said an hour off, it was 3 hours off. All right, coming back from summer vacation, there's a transition there. Other questions right at this moment? Okay. At this point, we're missing 5. So, getting a hold of me. If you preferred to get a hold of me through email, however, that's not always necessarily convenient for you, or, I mean, there are other ways, but email. However, I do not get emails on my phone. I am still, I would say old school, but old school wouldn't have a phone at all. I've got a flip phone. Yes, I can access the internet on it. However, everything is this tiny. So don't work under the assumption that if you send me an email, I'm gonna see it immediately. I will only see it when I log in. So, I'm trying to think, I don't think there's been any situation in which there's been something so urgent from my point of view that it needed to be resolved at that moment. You might feel differently, but I mean, if you have an assignment coming up and you have a burning question, you can, I'll work with you on that. And don't feel that you have to have your question answered immediately. Or, I guess in an ideal case, well, ideally, you don't have any questions because you understand it. And the other one is you've started early enough to work on the material so that you don't need to be asking questions at the last minute. I'll live in that dream world for right now. And also, I typically don't check email on the weekends unless we've made some pre-arrangement. I do have students that the way their schedule works, if they have questions, they'll have a question by, say, Saturday at 6 p.m. And so I make an arrangement that I will check email. So if you need, because of circumstances, need me to check email on the weekends, just talk to me about that. I think that's about it. The rest of the orientation, there are videos galore out there, which if you went through the orientation videos, no doubt it will be the best time that you have ever spent. If anybody watched some of those orientation videos? Are they as exciting and dynamic as you would expect them to be? I'm seeing a nod yes and a shake no. So apparently one of them was looking at the wrong videos. All right. With one exception, all of you, come on in. Name? Who are you?
Hannah Mae.
Okay. So with one exception, all of you are also in the lab. And I'll talk to that individual separately. But the way I view this is I've got a block from 11 to 2:50 to do what I want in it. So I have, based upon the 1 8-week hybrid or whatever they're blended, whatever they're calling this, during that semester, basically sometimes we just did class for the full time, sometimes we did lab during the second part of it. It just depended upon how the class was going, depending upon the questions that were being asked or what was coming up. So I sort of view some flexibility there. That might change, but that's sort of the way it is right now. well, you know what, other stuff will come to me as you're doing this assessment. I'm about to give a pre-course assessment. What I'm about to hand to you, please do not write on, please do not mark on it. If there are marks on it already, just let me know when you hand it back in, and I'll correct it for the next group. Do not assume that any marks on the paper are an indication of a correct or an incorrect answer. Yep, and you'll notice some of these have been used for, at this point, 11 years. So I'm still hoping to use them longer. Some are newer just because they get worn out after a while, or at some point somebody marks on it and I can't erase it sufficiently. So you'll need your own separate paper. When you are done with this assessment, we still have class, but when you're done, bring it up. Don't wait for me to call them in. So this also gives me an idea of who's still working. Because view of the board for the next 45 minutes, not exciting. Be able to rejoice. Oh, let me back this up. You're good with this close? So when you're talking about how fast something is going, how can they both be right? You've got two very different answers.
Your time and your distance and your gravitational pull.
Let's not complicate it too much. Let's just
Okay.
time and distance.
Okay.
So expand on that a little bit, Isabella.
Like when it, like referring to a plane, when it was dropped and how far it was from like the ground. So like the ball might not, or the bowling ball might not have been moving, but when it left the plane, it was not the speed, but the acceleration rate when it did fall. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm
the
not
acceleration would
explaining
affect how long it takes to hit the ground.
this. Yeah, I'm not good at explaining this.
That's okay. This is all part of the learning process. All right, let's, in terms of how fast we're going, there's a key element that I did not state when I was doing the bowling ball problem, except for the fact that they did mention the observer. But if let's just assume that those three people spoke for the class. So 2/3 of the class said, there's so much wrong in that. But anyway, 2/3 of the class, 2/3 of those who responded, that's better wording, said that the speed of 0, and then one person said, however fast the Earth is turning. Anyone want to come up with another answer?
Oh, moving around the sun as well.
Ah. So now we have 3 legitimate answers. Except when you're taking a test, there's only going to be 1 legitimate answer. So how can all 3 of those be right? What do you need to state when talking about how fast something is going?
In relation to something else?
Yes. That's key. So in the case of the airplane flying, that speed was relative to a person standing on the ground. Generally, when you talk about speed, when the policeman pulls you over and tells you how fast you're going, he's not telling you relative to the rotation of the Earth or how fast it's going around the sun. It's relative to the ground. So how fast is, when I say how fast is the bowling ball going, I did not state it, and someone could have questioned me on it. But relative to the ground, how fast was the bowling ball going when it rolls out the plane?
400?
Around that. Probably a little bit less. If the plane's going 400 and the ball's coming back off of it, it'd be 399. If it's going 200 miles per hour relative to the ground, somebody has shot that ball out of a cannon or something. When you throw a bowling ball down a bowling lane, probably not going 200 miles an hour. At least not the way I do it. granny shot. So the bowling ball is going roughly the speed of the airplane, a little bit less because otherwise if it were going the exact same speed as the airplane, it would not roll out the back. And so then it comes a matter of, since the plane's moving this way, the ball ball's going to be moving along with it. And now we sort of down to those two. So congratulations to the one who did get it right. But it actually, as we'll talk about later, will arc. I think the arcing we get into, well, we'll address it as we go, but officially, I think that's chapter 10 when we talk about the arc.
Why would it be coming out of the plane and going like that instead of going?
Because when it comes out of the plane, it's cruising at roughly the same speed of the plane. It's like you take an object and you are throwing it that way at 399 miles an hour relative to the ground.
Oh.
So it's shooting that way. Because of acceleration, it's not falling particularly fast to start with, and then it picks up downward part as the longer it goes. So
Yeah.
it starts out with not much vertical and more vertical as it goes.
Gotcha.
Anyway. That's roughly the distribution that I see every semester at this point. You will see this test again. Next time is for a grade. This time was just to see where you are. I think it's listed as test 3 in the syllabus. No, wrong class, test 2. All right, a couple other points. There's the official, whatever name you used when you registered. And I think most people have gone by that, or they wrote that name up on what they just handed in. If you go by a different name, if you prefer to be called something else, please let me know. Sign your papers that way. The name that's going to stick in my head is whatever you keep signing with. I had a student a couple years ago, I had him for 2 semesters. Near the end of the second semester, he corrected the name I was calling him. But he had signed all of his papers, every single one for 2 semesters, what was officially on the roll, but he really did not like going by that name. So I have no problem. I can make notes, I can draw, I can somehow indicate you go by a different name. That's fine. Just let me know. For those of you who are wearing masks, thank you. I appreciate that.
Want me to wear one?
That is my preference.
Okay, I have one next time.
Thank you. But I can't force it. I mean, it's also, this is a part face-to-face and part online. Basically, half the class is online. I am assuming that you will be watching the videos under coursework. If you haven't seen if you've gone to coursework and you can't see anything there, that's because you haven't taken the course entry assignment yet. You have to do a course entry assignment at least once before that stuff shows up. If it's already showing up and you haven't done the course entry assignment at all, then I messed up when I set the system up. For the lab piece of it, there's also a course entry assignment. It's just one question, and I will tell you right now, it's very clear when you read it what the answer is, because I state in there what the answer is. The answer is 42. I believe that's choice A. So for the course entry assignment for the lab, just go in and you'll spend most of your time waiting for the system to respond after you click on something. For the class, though, it takes a little bit longer, or a lot longer. Questions up to here? Yeah, Britannia.
Yeah, will there be any lab reports?
Yes, not formal ones.
Okay.
If you've done a formal lab report, I will say the reason I don't do formal lab reports is not convinced much is gained from it, but also the average score out of 100 on the formal lab reports is about 30. It's painful for everyone. But if you would like a formal lab report, I will be glad to.
No, thank you.
Okay. Just trying to meet what you need. Let me know.
Do we have Zoom meetings or no? Zoom calls?
So, say it again?
Calls like on Zoom for like the online part sometimes? or
The
no?
online piece of it is asynchronous. During the virtual office hours, I need to set up a Zoom call so people can call in to that, but I don't have that set up yet. Yeah. If you need to meet individually over Zoom, we can always set that up. Hopefully I'll remember to do that today. And on Wednesday, if I still haven't done it, harass me.
You still using the same book? Or is it a
Yes,
different book?
same book. Anyone bring a copy of the textbook? Good. So she's hopefully gonna pull out the one that I'm expecting to see.
Really hope so too.
Ooh.
She is.
All fancy there.
Amazon, where's cheaper on Amazon?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the right one.
Doesn't it come with the class though? That book doesn't come with the class?
Not the
No.
paper version.
Oh, just the,
Yeah, I got the digital.
Okay. And you didn't bring the digital copy in?
I got my computer.
I know.
I threw away the paper one, I didn't want to come back.
All right. All right, occasionally I do have a student who is, for whatever reason, comes in with a different edition. If you're in that situation, we probably should talk about similarities and differences. But anyway, the one thing I've noticed for actually any of the classes is how well the class does really depends on the number of questions being asked. So I have had classes with, there was one class, one extrovert, everyone else was an introvert. And just that's the way it is, but it was a very quiet class at times. So please, feel free to ask questions. Whether you send me an email, you call my office phone, you call into the Zoom when I get that set up. Just asking questions gives me a sense of where people are. Because sometimes I like to kid myself that I'm not getting any questions because people understand all the material. Yeah, wait.
Is physics like a lot of math? Cause I was looking it up to see how it was, and I seen like it was a lot of math, so I was trying to see like.
All right, so in terms of the math, one other thing before I get to that. Some of you might have noticed already, I've asked you to repeat yourselves. My hearing is not great. I've got it tested, and they say, no, you're not a hearing aid yet, but basically you need to talk louder than the ringing in my ears. I apologize for that, but just speak loudly. There are times which I had a student ask a question I haven't understood, so I ask them to repeat it, and then I step towards the student so that I'll hear better. And when I step towards the student, the volume drops. And so, please, if I step towards you, even go louder. Feel free to be loud. So, thank you. And I've lost the question already, I'm sorry. One more time?
No, you're fine. I was asking like, I had looked up to see
Oh,
what to
math.
expect during physics.
All right, so some of the math that I'm going to use on the board will, hopefully, when it's beyond the scope, I'll say, I'm just doing this just so that you see that there's a reason for it. I mean, as opposed to just throwing up a formula onto the board showing that there's some connection between what we've done and what we're going to do. So there are a couple places where I say, I'm doing this just so that you see that there's a flow there. If you follow the steps, great. If you don't follow the steps, that's fine. In terms of the actual math, I sort of view it as pre-algebra based math. I mean, if I gave you 5x equals 7, can you solve for x? If I throw in a +1 right here, is that And I have had students who, whenever any math comes up, I have seen them visibly shake at it. So whatever math level you're in, whether I've had calculus students in Physics 110, and I've had those who hadn't had math for 20 years. So presumably you're somewhere in that spectrum. By an x squared is equal to, let's make it something different, 5. This also, I feel, is fair game, but I don't know. I'm looking at you, Kimberly, because you started the question, but are you feeling like this is overwhelming yet?
No, I just forgot how to solve it, but it's not overwhelming.
Okay. Square root.
Oh, okay.
Other questions or concerns at the moment? All right, I want to do one thing before we do the lab. Yeah. And I need 3 volunteers. So we're going to step out into the hallway. And I have 3 volunteers. All right, so Ethan and
I volunteer.
Toya, Amina. All right, everyone come out, and for the 3 volunteers, which one of you do you think is the strongest? Oh, sorry, which one of you is the weakest? I need the weakest one.
I've been working out, so.
All right, so I think, Amina, that puts you at the weakest. All right, so you get a pair of gloves. And Toya, pair of gloves for you. All right, come on out.